Were the pharaohs of old Egypt half-breed outsiders? Stunning examinations, the history of ancient Egypt continues to intrigue scholars, historians, and archaeologists worldwide. One particular area of interest is the origin and racial identity of the Egyptian pharaohs, specifically whether they were native Egyptians or half-breed outsiders. The ancient civilization of Egypt, known for its powerful rulers, technological innovations, and impressive monuments, evokes numerous questions. Through comprehensive research, scholars have proposed various theories about the racial composition of the rulers who shaped Egypt's destiny. This article will explore the most compelling evidence, academic examinations, and the cultural significance of this ongoing debate. Pharaohs in the context of ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt was a civilization that stretched along the fertile banks of the Nile River for over 3,000 years. The pharaoh, revered as a god-king, held supreme power, directing both political and spiritual life in Egypt. As the primary figure representing the gods on earth, the pharaoh was the embodiment of ma'at, order, justice, and harmony. Pharaohs commanded vast armies, commissioned monumental construction projects, and performed religious rituals that sustained the social fabric of their people. However, in light of modern scholarship and archaeological discoveries, questions have arisen about whether the pharaohs were ethnically and racially native to the lands they ruled. Influence of Nubian and Libyan dynasties. During different periods of Egypt's history, foreign powers influenced the royal lineage. The 25th dynasty, for example, was known as the Nubian or Kushite dynasty. These rulers, hailing from the Nubian region south of Egypt, ruled Egypt during a time of political fragmentation. They brought a distinct cultural influence but also integrated into the existing Egyptian political system, adopting the title and role of pharaoh. Similarly, the Libyan dynasties, particularly the 22nd and 23rd dynasties, saw rulers of Libyan Berber descent assuming the Egyptian throne. They had settled in Egypt as military mercenaries and gradually rose to power, suggesting that Egypt's rulers may not always have been ethnically homogeneous. Genetic studies and DNA analysis. Recent technological advancements have allowed for more detailed genetic studies of the mummified remains of ancient Egyptian rulers. For example, the DNA analysis of King Tutankhamun's family has shed light on the possible origins of the pharaohs. Geneticists found traces of sub-Saharan African ancestry mixed with Near Eastern and Mediterranean elements, indicating a complex genetic makeup. These findings support the notion that Egyptian rulers, at least during certain dynasties, may have been a blend of different ethnicities, likely due to Egypt's geopolitical position as a hub for trade and conquest. Cultural assimilation of outsiders. Egypt, with its wealth and resources, was a desirable conquest for many foreign powers. Throughout its history, it experienced invasions by Hyksos, Assyrians, Persians, Greeks, and Romans. Each of these incursions left a mark on Egypt's ruling class. Notably, the Hyksos, who were Semitic rulers from the Levant, seized control of northern Egypt during the Second Intermediate Period. Their reign lasted for over a century before native Egyptian rulers expelled them. Despite being foreign rulers, the Hyksos embraced many aspects of Egyptian culture, language, and religion. The Greeks, under the Ptolemaic dynasty, were perhaps the most famous example of outsiders ruling Egypt. Following Alexander the Great's conquest, his general Ptolemy established a dynasty that ruled Egypt for nearly 300 years. Despite being of Macedonian Greek descent, the Ptolemies styled themselves as Egyptian pharaohs and maintained traditional Egyptian customs. Intermarriage with neighboring peoples. Marriages between Egyptian royalty and foreign princesses were common practice, particularly during periods when Egypt sought to secure alliances with neighboring kingdoms. Egyptian rulers would marry daughters of rulers from the Levant, Nubia, and Mesopotamia, incorporating their bloodlines into the royal family. This practice not only strengthened political ties but also diversified the genetic makeup of the ruling class. Some scholars argue that these marriages were instrumental in creating a more diverse ruling class, potentially leading to the idea of half-breed pharaohs. Queen Tai, the wife of Pharaoh Amenhotep III and the grandmother of Tutankhamun, is believed to have had Nubian ancestry. Her marriage to Amenhotep III was celebrated for uniting different cultural and ethnic elements within the royal family. Ancient Egyptian perceptions of race and identity. In considering whether the pharaohs were half-breed outsiders, it is crucial to understand how the ancient Egyptians viewed race and identity. Ancient Egyptian art and texts often depicted foreigners with different skin tones and features, yet there is little evidence to suggest that the Egyptians used modern concepts of race to define their leaders. Instead, they focused on cultural and religious factors, viewing Egypt as the center of the civilized world, with the pharaoh as the divine intermediary between gods and humans. Artistic depictions and racial representation. The racial identity of the pharaohs is further complicated by the diverse portrayals of rulers in ancient Egyptian art. Pharaohs were often depicted with idealized, uniform features, regardless of their actual physical appearance. Nubian rulers, for example, were sometimes shown with darker skin and distinct facial features, while other pharaohs were depicted with more generalized or symbolic features that aligned with Egyptian artistic conventions rather than realistic portrayals. Historical accounts by ancient historians from the ancient world also contributed to the debate over the origins of Egypt's rulers. The Greek historian Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BCE, described Egyptians as having dark skin and woolly hair, leading to speculation that the ancient Egyptians, including their rulers, may have had sub-Saharan African origins. While Herodotus' accounts are often considered anecdotal, they have sparked debates about the racial identity of the Egyptians. The role of Egypt's geographic position. Egypt's unique position between Africa, the Middle East, and the Mediterranean made it a melting pot of cultures and ethnicities. As a result, the ruling class could have easily reflected this diverse makeup. Egypt's interactions with the Nubians to the south, the Levantine peoples to the northeast, and the Mediterranean cultures to the north would have introduced various genetic influences into the royal bloodlines over time. Egypt's conquests and their impact on royal bloodlines. Egypt's imperial ambitions during the New Kingdom saw it conquer and control territories as far afield as modern-day Sudan and the Levant. As Egypt extended its reach, it absorbed not only the wealth and resources of these regions, but also their people. This military expansion contributed to the mixing of bloodlines within Egypt's royal family, as foreign captives were brought into the kingdom and sometimes integrated into the aristocracy. The Hyksos period and foreign rule. One of the most significant periods of foreign influence in Egypt's history was during the rule of the Hyksos. These Asiatic rulers controlled parts of Egypt during the Second Intermediate Period and were known for their advancements in military technology. While their rule was relatively short-lived, it is believed that they intermarried with the Egyptian aristocracy, blending their lineage with that of the native ruling class. The Nubian pharaohs and their legacy. The 25th dynasty, also known as the Nubian dynasty, provides a striking example of foreign rule in Egypt. Originating from the kingdom of Kush and Nubia, these rulers were descendants of the same African peoples who had long interacted with Egypt. The Nubian pharaohs emphasized their connection to traditional Egyptian culture, restoring temples, and promoting the worship of Egyptian gods. Their reign demonstrated how foreign rulers could assimilate into Egyptian society while still maintaining elements of their own cultural identity. The Macedonian Greek Ptolemaic dynasty, the final dynasty to rule Egypt before its absorption into the Roman Empire, was the Ptolemaic dynasty. Although the Ptolemies were of Macedonian Greek descent, they adopted many Egyptian customs, including the practice of marrying within the family, to maintain a pure royal bloodline. Cleopatra VII, the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic kingdom, was of Greek origin but is often associated with Egypt due to her role as pharaoh and her efforts to maintain Egypt's independence. Roman conquest and the end of the pharaohs. With the Roman conquest of Egypt in 30 BCE, the era of the pharaohs came to an end. However, Egypt's legacy as a cultural and political melting pot continued under Roman rule. The Roman emperors, while not Egyptian by blood, took on the title of pharaoh and participated in Egyptian religious rites, further blending the identities of foreign rulers and the native culture. Modern scholarly debates. Modern scholars remain divided over the question of whether the pharaohs were half-breed outsiders. Some argue that the foreign influences in Egypt were primarily cultural rather than genetic, while others point to the evidence of intermarriage and foreign rule as proof of a more diverse ruling class. The lack of definitive DNA evidence for many of Egypt's ancient rulers makes it difficult to reach a clear conclusion. Conclusion: the pharaohs as cultural hybrids. Ultimately, the pharaohs of Egypt may be best understood as cultural hybrids rather than strictly foreign outsiders. While some dynasties were of foreign origin, these rulers often adopted Egyptian traditions and identified themselves as part of the long lineage of Egyptian kings. The idea of half-breed pharaohs highlights the fluid nature of identity in the ancient world, where cultural and political power often transcended rigid ethnic boundaries.